First flashback that was ever used in film was The History of Crime in 1901, a silent film that revolves around a thief who eventually gets caught, and while he is imprisoned, we see a flashback of how he reimagines his past as an honest citizen, but has resorted to criminality because of his alcohol consumption. Flashbacks have a purpose. It is not meant to be random. Flashbacks break the chronological order of a story and in return helps us understand the characters better. Films such as Once Upon a Time in the West and The Night Porter share a unique similarity when it comes to flashbacks. It is about how both characters endure their post-traumatic experiences. Let's contextualize the films to better understand their experiences. Sergio Leone's 1968 Once Upon a Time in the West is what people would regard as the ultimate Western. Like any other Western, there exists a good guy and a bad guy, but this Western feels more contemplative and meaningful in a sense. To quickly summarize this 3-hour film, there exists a property named Sweetwater, a property that is predicted to be profitable by a capitalist named Morton. Sends Frank and his men to scare over the owner, but instead Frank massacres their entire family and attempts to overtake the property himself instead of Morton. But before that, we meet a mysterious man whom everyone calls Harmonica. Now, we don't really understand his motivations or intentions in the beginning stages until this moment, and that is where the flashback chimes in and reveals that Frank has murdered his brother. In the second film, Liliana Cavani 1974, The Night Porter, is darker than most films that I personally watched. It outlines an unusual relationship between a concentration camp survivor, Lucia, and a former SS guard, Max. After the fall of Nazism, they meet once again where Max works as a night porter at a hotel. They attempt in every way possible to relive their masochistic relationship secretly, and from there, we're left following their relationship until it reaches its end. Both films put a clear emphasis on how the main characters are enduring their humiliated past. The difference would expand on their response to that humiliation. For instance, in Once Upon a Time in the West, Harmonica, although being a byproduct of injustice in the hands of a cutthroat leader, Frank, it is clear to see that he is a wounded character from the beginning, and from the flashbacks of Frank coming towards him, we realize this isn't about Harmonica's vengeance, but the guilt that Frank had inflicted on him for a very long time. In The Night Porter, we get a hefty amount of flashbacks, but in this one, we get a quick glimpse into Lucia's humiliation, an experience that is considered discriminatory and barbaric. Such emphasis uses illumination of practical camera lighting that reminds her of bits and pieces of the past. After watching the film, seeing Lucia contemplating her past made me realize that she might be developing Stockholm Syndrome, which happens when victims bond with their abusers. Whether that bond is part of a true love or a power dynamic between her and Max is left for the viewer's interpretation. In the final duel, there are dynamic camera changes from Frank's extreme long shot and then a long take of Harmonica's close-up shot to extreme close-up. The motivation obviously is to extract the built-up emotion on his face, which then opens the door for a flashback of his childhood memory. And that mystery to revelation shot answers Frank's and everyone's question.
Who are you?
There are 3 changes within the camera angles, from medium shot to medium close-up and then fixating on that close-up. And that is a similar approach to Once Upon a Time in the West, where before we're even allowed to enter their past, we have to first witness their emotions and humiliations. It is incredible to see how colors are used to convey a message, not just to insinuate a mood about a film, but to represent character traits. For example, Harmonica is in all light clothes and wearing a white hat, whereas Frank is in all black suit and wearing a black hat. Like I said before about Westerns, we know that there's a good guy and a bad guy, and that choice of color really fits their personalities, white being the color of innocence and black being the color of fear and death. And that is true for the Night Porter, Lucia wearing all white dress and Max wearing an all black SS suit. And not to mention, there are two different color palettes in each flashback's lighting, and that sets two different tonalities. We see that colors are a lot more darker and vivid in each flashback versus the present day, where colors are a lot more lighter. And that's a strategic way of using subtleties to represent characters and environmental tones. There are multiple observations that are made about framing and positioning, especially in this scene where the composition is perfect and loosely framed, which is perfect because it's in the middle of nowhere, and that leaves us with plenty of space that would invite us to his flashback. Whereas Lucia is tightly framed, especially in an intimate space such as a bathroom, and before inviting us to her flashback, we see how her position in the present matches her position in the flashback, and that tight frame and position would be a major sign of discomfort and nervousness. It's a mixture of diegetic and non-diegetic sounds, which includes strings, harmonic, and vocals, sounds that scream character tragedy in every possible direction, as well as mixing it with harmonica shaking, breathing really hard into the instrument, and at last, as harmonica falls, we hear the bell chime because his brother's noose is connected to the bell, and it sounds like a midnight bell chime, which would mark the end of harmonica's tragic story. In The Night Porter, it is entirely diegetic, and it revolves around women screaming, people that are moving around and doing checkups, and this almost silent sound serves as a reminder of Jews who are being treated as experimental animals made solely for the amusement of the guards. Finalizing the films, we explore both of our characters' involvement with the absolute worst part of humanity. In the following scenes, we slowly take in and observe them going through that part of their lives and seeing them progress afterwards, and that speaks to the theme of character development, which we have already established for our two main characters, seeing them displayed in ways where they're both innocent and vulnerable, as well as being treated unjustifiably all throughout their childhood. And that leaves them with a permanent scar that continues to remind them of their perpetrators and as a result harms them mentally. That subject of suffering, innocence, and injustice will continue to influence the major themes of Once Upon a Time in the West and The Night Porter.